Hey, Maria back with another video. It's 1:41 p.m. It is August 20th and it is Thursday afternoon and the time is flying by very fast. I mean, it seems like, the weeks are just spinning and speeding by and, I feel like, gosh, I'm not really getting anywhere because I've been dealing with a load of roadblocks, which I've talked about in my last video. But today I was thinking about, advice and how we sometimes seek advice and then sometimes advice is imposed on us. And generally when it's imposed on us as a targeted individual, it's done in a very forceful manner, and usually without our consent or knowledge. And so, when I think about people who give advice, some of it, you have to be able to take with a grain of salt, decide what is good for you, what works for you. Is it in your world? Like, for example, in my case, I was dealing with a lot of traditionalist people who come from different backgrounds that are completely different than mine. And so their world advice and their worldview obviously doesn't coincide with mine. But generally, like this sign says, it says unsolicited advice is usually more about the needs of the giver than the receiver. And sometimes it's not even mostly not need, it's more a fact that this is all they know, based on their limited worldview. So, what you want to do is you want to find people who are understanding of you. Each person is an individual, and I didn't come from a traditional background, although I do have, what I consider to be traditional values in a lot of ways, okay? But they may not be the same traditional values of other people. And, sometimes, like in my case, you're expected to live up to other people's expectations that are unrealistic. And, some of the people that advise you obviously come from different, maybe religious backgrounds or cultural backgrounds. And so obviously their advice has no place in your world. So in my case, right now, I am doing what I can to get back on my feet after dealing with, campaign smears and sabotage and God knows what else, And so you have to, it's very hard for targeted individuals to get advice because most professional pamphlets and whatnot don't cover, the issue of gang stalking, which I'm hoping that in the future it will change because obviously somebody who, a 40-year-old something person who's been sitting at home, maybe, maybe they're done raising their kids and they want to go back into the workforce, is a lot different than somebody who had to deal with what I call a genocidal type campaign launched on them, okay? So it's a lot different. And so you have to use different strategies and different ways of accomplishing that. And, hopefully, one day I will be able to give that advice to somebody because it really is in need. Especially, since there are so many targeted individuals, not just here in the United States, but in the world. And so, I thought that I do respect other people's views, and I do respect their traditions, and I do respect whatever background they come from. And I do believe that they have the right to exercise their beliefs and live their lives however they want to. But I don't expect other people to impose those views on me. It really doesn't have a place in my world. I do understand that there's this form of professionalism that you're supposed to, display when you are in a work environment. So obviously, there's certain things of your person relating to your personality that needs to kind of go into the background, okay? There's a lot of people who have, decent positions or whatever, but on their free time, they do different things. Maybe they might be into motorcycles. I knew a person who worked in accounting, and they were really into motorcycles. They rode their motorcycle to work every day or whatever. I believe he even was in a part of a motorcycle gang, but that's something that you leave, at the door. And I fully understand that. But when people try to define who you are, and especially put these expectations on a person who is already over the age of where they've developed their personality and who they are and their world vision um, and their personality is pretty much already established. it seems a little silly to to deal with people who don't really fit in with you. Like I said, this particular network that, and I'm not drudging it up, but this is just an example. My previous network, okay, which I didn't consent to being a part of, are more traditionalist, okay? They tend to, and then I would say that my previous network was comprised mostly of people of a different race than me, okay? And so it's not trying to be, even though I would say that I don't have a good relationship with the people that were involved in my previous network. I will say that this is not personal. I would not appreciate advice from anybody who cannot relate to me specifically, meaning, and it's not being arrogant or it's not being selfish, it's just logical sense. For example, you're dealing with a black woman's hair, okay? So, we're talking about, some people have these, this advice, well, I think you should do this and I think you should do that, and their advice is not going to help you, okay, because they're not in your shoes. And then I do believe this one particular person who I worked with, and I'm not trying to bring up their issue, but this particular person that I worked with, who was a part of my network that I did not invite into being in my network, was used as an example for me to follow. This person is like 25 years younger than me, and she is biracial, okay? And of course, she's going to kind of more lean towards, white life more so than me. And so I honestly feel as though, suggesting that I take advice from somebody who's younger than me just because they are of a different, that more, they're white, they're half white, doesn't, it's like, obviously that's based on racism. So, if I needed advice, I would have asked for it, okay? I don't need anyone's advice. I'm fine on my own, okay? And I do believe that some of this advice was based on selfish motives a little bit, which is the issue of targeted individuals. I mean, when you're a targeted individual, I will tell you that your situation is not based on anything friendly, it's not based on anything caring, and it's not based on anybody's true concern for you. The very fact that you're in this situation, okay, the very fact that it has become a widespread issue and there's so much forceful measures being directed towards you is because this is not something that is it's not friendly, it's not pleasant, it is not something for your own well-being, okay? So targets are targets for malicious reasons, and this is what you have to understand. So, I do see that there are some benefits to, researching professional information, which I have done that throughout my entire life. Since I was 16 years old, I would read articles and people's writings on, how to deal with job interviews, how to conduct yourself, how to communicate, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but like I said, the issues of being a target individual are not covered. The only thing I can suggest for people in my situation, which there's tons of people in my situation, okay, is you just have to press forward. You just have to press forward, and you hope to find, it's hard, okay, it's very hard, but you know that you can't go back to a situation that was impossible for you to work through, okay? Not everybody that is on your team is really and truly on your team, if you know what I mean by that. So, it's hard because most people do have people that they can rely on, trustworthy people that they, feel that are taking your interests in consideration and working within those guidelines, okay? Instead of doing things behind the scenes, which obviously that's a telltale sign that there's some sort of mischief going on. I am proud of my accomplishments, meaning that, I feel as though I've done a lot for somebody who has experienced a lot of setbacks. And I do believe that I have 100% confidence in my skills and my abilities. I don't, I would say that what they try to do usually with two targets is they generally try to change their personality in a lot of ways, and that it is it's impossible to do. Meaning, this is who I am. Especially at the age that I am now, it is silly to do this. But what it is, it always results in bullying. Always results in bullying, and unfortunately, I guess I should say, fortunately, by looking at the mistakes of others, this is what gives me confirmation that I'm on the right track. Meaning, whether my endeavors of being self-reliant professionally is successful or not, I will at least know that I never did anything unethical to hurt another person. And you have to learn from the mistakes of others. And when people give you advice, carefully consider the source. Consider the source. I cannot I cannot emphasize that enough. Consider the source. Who is giving the advice? And you can pretty much figure out why they are. Okay. Take what is needed. Take what makes logical sense to you, and disregard the rest. Not all advice is garbage. Okay. Not all of it is. But as a targeted individual, you're not going to find a very good, anything that's something that completely relates to you. Obviously, we've been out of the workforce for longer periods of time for stranger reasons than most people. Okay, there's a lot of people who decide to just get back to work, and after a long period of time, after raising their kids or whatever. So like I said, their situation is completely different. But we've dealt with the campaign smears. We've dealt with the issues that should have never been brought up in an employment situation, and yet these illegal issues are what is being held against us, and it's wrong. It's wrong, and it's sad that that the employment sector is filled with a lot of unethical practices. But I want it to be made clear that I believe in this way of doing things. Like, I believe in upholding confidentiality. I believe in respecting the rights of others. I believe in keeping personal information confidential. And then also upholding things like, the confidentiality once a person has separated from a company, especially when, you've dealt with an issue like mine. And I'm not trying to bring it up or anything, but when I left and I signed a confidentiality contract, that meant that I was protecting not only myself, but I was protecting the employer. Because the employer is basically, by signing this contract, they're acknowledging that you had a disagreement. Okay, that disagreement is something that is not supposed to hurt you in your future endeavors. Okay, because you are keeping your end of the bargain by saying, okay, yes, this was wrong. I didn't do anything, but I am free to go on with my life. Okay, and then the employer is basically protected, because what happened at this particular employer's place was something that would make the employer look bad. So I kept my end of the bargain. I only started talking about it when I realized that I was gang stalked and the people at my workplace were involved in it. So I needed to speak out, mainly because I was dealing with the same bullying that I was dealing with at that workplace. So you have to speak out. But before all of that, before I realized what was going on, I upheld that confidentiality contract. And still to this day, like when I'm in, the process of job interviews or, talking to prospective employers, I don't bring it up. I usually say, oh, I moved on for professional reasons. I wanted more challenge or whatever. Okay. I try my hardest to never thrash my previous employer. So, I try to do things in an ethical manner, even though I know that my surroundings don't necessarily display the same form of ethics that I do. But I want it to be said in my life that I never resorted to throwing anyone under the bus, that I never slashed anyone's throat, that I never did anything that was, that was going to result in harming anyone, and that's important. So the same people who are willing to give me advice tend to violate these laws, okay? And this is why I'm saying consider the source, okay? Take what you need, and take advice that makes sense to you. Take advice that is in alignment with how you live. And sometimes, you have to consider certain things because it's logical. Like, for example, maybe they're advising you to go into a particular industry because this particular company is hiring more. Then I can understand that, okay? But when they are basically trying to change your life and enforce their lifestyles, their religion on you, these sort of things, especially when it comes to work, okay? You need to understand that you have rights, okay? And these things are violating laws that should not be taking place. And I tend to respect these ways of doing things, regardless of the fact that I know that most people don't. They tend to ignore them, or they're either they ignore them, or they aren't even aware that they exist. But I do have a good way of conducting business, and I believe strongly 100% in what I'm saying and what I'm talking about and my vision of things, because the law is on my side. That's why. So anyway, when it comes to advice, not just in advice when it comes going back to work, but just advice in general, okay? Always consider, why is this person telling you this? And what is it that they hope to get from this? Because most people are looking for something, okay? And a lot of people, even if they're related to you, don't necessarily have your best interest at heart. And that's something you definitely have to keep in the back of your mind, okay? And then do some scenarios before, think about, if I was to listen to this particular person, where would this lead me? Where would this, is it leading me to my highest goals in life? Is it something that I believe in? Could I live with the outcome if I was to follow this person's advice? Think about that before you just quickly, agree to what a person is suggesting to you, because it's really important that you do. You're going to have to live the rest of your life, and it could be something that's, that creates a severe consequence in your life, okay, that will have an unhappy outcome. In this case, and with a lot of female targeted individuals, it is not uncommon for single females, to get trapped in a targeting system or program, also known as gang stalking, to either force them into staying in a marriage or to get married or something along those lines. And you have to understand that most of the time when you are dealing with perpetrators or whatever, their prospective marriage mates are affiliated with the very same people that have harmed you. Okay, so it's in your best interest to steer clear of anyone that is going to set out these sort of lures for you. You have to be very careful about who you meet, who you talk to, and that's just how it is. Okay, because like I said, this sort of advice and sort of help is generally to benefit them. Whether maybe they might be nosy, maybe they want to know what your morning routine is, just for their own weird selfish satisfaction. So be careful about that, okay? But ask yourself these questions. And even if you're not a targeted individual, to prevent being a targeted individual, you got to be careful about who you talk to, okay? That's everyone. I mean, people have all kinds of motives right now. They always have, okay? People are generally self-driven, and they're, whoopsie, looks like I lost my recording for a minute, but they are generally motivated by selfish motives, So be careful about that. And not just in cases of being a targeted individual, that's everyone. So think about, consider it. Don't give them an answer right away if they're bold enough to even suggest this in front of your face. And if they're doing things behind the scenes, you as a targeted individual, you'll generally figure out why they're doing it behind the scenes, because they know that they know that you would never authorize them to do something like that. So that's why they do it behind the scenes, because they know that this is something that you would never agree to. So anyway, I am just kind of pedaling around today, and I did work on some of my revamping my resumes and thinking about all this stuff, and it is extremely overwhelming for me, but it's something that I have to do. You know, we get put in situations where we are vulnerable to outside abuses, and we have to keep pressing forward. We have to think of ourselves as strong because, um, you know, we live in a very dark world. Like, you know, people are spiritually dark. Like, seriously, they are spiritually dark. They don't have a good sense of morals. They will put you in a situation and then they'll leave you in a situation. But if they leave you in a situation, don't be sad and don't feel bad about it. You just try to pick yourself back up, and that's all you can do. But we suffer from the consequences of the actions of other people. And this is one of the issues of being a targeted individual. We tend to be scapegoats for people who are either competitive, people who are dissatisfied in life, people who want to get ahead, you know. And I never realized how cutthroat, you know, the business world was. I mean, they act like, you know, you're going for some like $100,000 job or something, but people um, are basically greedy and selfish in this world, and you have to be on the lookout for those people, okay? And not everybody plays fair, okay? But my approach is that, you know, I prefer to work directly by myself and try to prove my skills and demonstrate my skills on my own, rather than have someone try to define me and try to make decisions for me that are not in my best interest. You know, in the past, you know, as a targeted individual, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, you may have received job offers that are not really in alignment with your goals. Maybe there's not enough hours. Maybe it's a job that really doesn't let you exploit your talents or your skills, or maybe it's a job that, you know, if you want to be more social, they want to keep you isolated or whatever. You have rights, okay? And you don't have to legally work into this little bubble. And it's very damaging to who we are in our emotional life, because we are basically just dredging along and collecting a paycheck, and not really enjoying what you're doing. When you choose another person's job, um, you know, sometimes if you have the ability to talk to someone, maybe a professional person who can put you in a position to meet influential people who can help you get your plans off the ground, then that's different. But when you're a targeted individual, everything is done behind the scenes, okay? So they're not listening to what you need. They don't care what you need, but they do want to exploit you. They want you to be put in situations where, you know, you basically working for nothing, because, you know, obviously if they don't like how you're spending your money, they don't like what you're wearing, they don't like, you know, what you do on your free time, blah 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 blah, and then they want to give you crappy jobs, and they want you to bend over backwards and just to keep that job, just so you can barely exist and you feel like you aren't growing spiritually, you know. And that's the biggest issue with targeted individuals, is the emptiness that they have to deal with in the workplace. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video. I just wanted to make this video really quick because it's, you know, there's certain things that are on my mind, and it's important for me to express them. And, you know, it is. I mean, this is my channel, right? And so I know that some of my perps were probably listening. No, I'm not dredging it up. I'm not keeping a fight. But it is extremely therapeutic to talk about my issue. I'm not bringing up names. I'm just talking. And the reason why I'm talking is because, you know, I have been put in a situation where I no longer trust anyone. I can't talk to anyone about my situation because it's a covert program and no one's going to admit to making this horrifying mistake that they made. And so you're left basically to deal with the emotional trauma and it's great, okay? And don't think that you can trust medical professions, like psychiatric or therapist or anything, because you can't trust them either, because they will allow themselves to they will involve themselves, okay, with the very people who are damaging you. Okay, there's very little scruples, okay, in the business world, okay. So, and it's unfortunate that, as a targeted individual, you have to deal with these sort of things, but we live in a very corrupt society. And so this is something that you have to keep in the back of your mind in all of your doings. Like, when it comes to advice, always wonder, is this person a greedy person? Are they a selfish person? And you have to take everything into consideration when you're interacting with people, especially as a target individual. Really, that applies to everyone, but especially as a targeted individual. So anyway, those are the thoughts were going through my mind. And so I'm going to wrap up this video, and I hope everyone has a great day. Take care.